The Blue Hole in Egypt. On May 12, 2000, Yuri Lipsky, a 22-year-old diver from Moscow, entered the Blue Hole on the coast of Dahab in Egypt. The site is a natural sinkhole connected to the Red Sea, surrounded by steep desert cliffs. It drops vertically to more than 300 feet, or about 100 meters, and for decades has been both a diving paradise and a death trap. At the base of the hole lies the Arch, a horizontal tunnel that connects to open water on the far side of the reef. The Arch has been called the Diver's Everest, a challenge that lures those who want to prove themselves against depth and distance. But without technical training, it is one of the deadliest passages in the world. Local authorities estimate that more than 150 people have died attempting it. Lipsky was not a seasoned technical diver. He carried only a single tank, no redundant gas supply, and no trimix blend to handle the depth. What he did carry was a helmet-mounted video camera. He intended to record his descent as a personal achievement. The footage that later emerged shows how quickly the dive went wrong. Instead of descending slowly, he sank rapidly, unable to control his buoyancy. At around 280 feet, his breathing became heavy and erratic. Nitrogen narcosis, a condition caused by the narcotic effect of nitrogen under high pressure, began to take hold. Divers often describe it as being drunk, confused, or euphoric, but at extreme depths, it is deadly. In the final minute of his recording, Lipsky thrashes in the sand at the bottom of the Blue Hole, disoriented and panicking. His regulator slips from his mouth. He tries to recover but fails. The camera captures his last desperate movements before falling still. He had descended to 300 feet in just minutes, far beyond safe limits. The next day, local recovery diver Tarek Omar descended to retrieve the body. Omar had already built a reputation as the keeper of the Blue Hole, having brought back the remains of more than 20 divers from its depths. Lipsky's death became internationally known after his recovered camera footage circulated online. To this day, it stands as one of the most chilling visual records of a diving fatality, a stark warning of how quickly the ocean punishes overconfidence. The Eagle's Nest Sinkhole in Florida, USA. On December 25, 2013, Christmas morning, two divers prepared to explore Eagle's Nest, a vast underwater cave system hidden within Chassahowitzko Wildlife Management Area in Florida. The divers were 35-year-old Darren Spivey and his 15-year-old son, Dylan Sanchez. Eagle's Nest is infamous in the diving community. It begins as a small pond in the woods, but beneath the surface it plunges into a labyrinth of vertical shafts and chambers, more than 300 feet deep. It has been nicknamed the Mount Everest of cave diving. The site is reserved for highly trained explorers with specialized equipment. But neither Spivey nor his son had formal cave diving certification. Spivey was an experienced open-water diver, but he had never been trained in cave protocols. Guidelines that include redundant breathing systems, safety lines, and decompression planning. Dylan was just beginning his diving experience, eager to follow in his father's footsteps. Despite warning signs at the entrance that clearly stated cave diving training required, prevent your death, the two entered the water. The pair descended into the main tunnel system sometime in the early afternoon. Hours passed with no sign of them returning. When family members grew worried, rescue divers were called. Eagle's Nest is notorious even for experienced recovery teams. The tunnels are tight, visibility can drop to zero, and the sheer depth makes every movement dangerous. The recovery divers eventually found both bodies deep inside the system. They had run out of air before reaching the exit. Investigators later determined that the two had become disoriented and lost their way in the passages. Spivey's tank was empty, and Dylan's was nearly so. Officials later confirmed that their equipment was suitable for shallow open water, but not for deep caves. The deaths sparked fierce debate. Some argued that Eagle's Nest should be permanently closed due to its long record of fatalities, nearly a dozen since the 1980s. Others countered that closing the cave would only drive thrill seekers to explore it illegally. Today, the site remains open, though it carries more warning signs than ever. For those who know its history, Eagle's Nest is a symbol of both natural beauty and human tragedy. Boesmansgat Cave, South Africa. On January 17, 1994, a young South African diver named Dion Dreyer joined an expedition into Boesmansgat, a sinkhole known locally as Bushman's Hole. Located in the northern Cape Province, the freshwater cave drops vertically into black water and reaches depths of nearly 1,000 feet. Dreyer, just 20 years old, was an enthusiastic diver with dreams of pushing limits. During the ascent from a routine dive, he lost consciousness at 150 feet. Witnesses later said he appeared to suffer from either shallow water blackout or equipment malfunction. Before anyone could reach him, he sank rapidly. His body disappeared into the depths, settling more than 270 meters below the surface. At that depth, recovery was beyond the reach of standard scuba. For 10 years, Dreyer's body remained trapped in the cave, known only by his family and the close-knit South African diving community. Then, in 2005, veteran technical diver Dave Shaw, an airline pilot from Australia, attempted to bring him home. Shaw was one of the few divers in the world who could operate at such extreme depths. Using a closed-circuit rebreather and specialized lights, he descended into the cave on January 8, 2005. Shaw located Dreyer's body, but when he tried to secure it in a body bag, the situation turned catastrophic. The corpse, preserved in the near-freezing water for over a decade, had become buoyant. The movement stirred up silt, filling the tunnel with total darkness. Shaw's equipment became entangled with Dreyer's harness. As he struggled, his rebreather flooded. He was unable to free himself. The next day, when recovery divers descended, they found both bodies together. In an extraordinary twist, Shaw's camera had continued recording until his final moments. The footage confirmed the exact sequence of events. For the Dreyer family, the tragedy was double. Their son's body was finally brought to the surface, but at the cost of another man's life. The Boesmansgat tragedy remains one of the most haunting stories in the history of cave diving. A stark reminder that even the most skilled explorers are vulnerable in the deep. The Byford Dolphin accident in the North Sea. On November 5, 1983, the oil platform support vessel Byford Dolphin was anchored in the frigid waters of the North Sea. It was part of the growing offshore oil industry that relied on saturation diving, a technique in which divers live in pressurized chambers for weeks, allowing them to work at great depths without repeatedly decompressing. On that morning, 4 divers were inside a pressurized chamber connected to a diving bell by a steel clamp. 2 support staff worked outside. At 4 a.m. during routine operations, the clamp was released prematurely. The effect was catastrophic. The chamber explosively decompressed from 9 atmospheres of pressure to normal surface pressure in less than a second. One diver, standing closest to the opening, was blown completely out of the chamber and killed instantly. The other 3 died where they stood as the sudden change tore their bodies apart internally. The 2 technicians outside were also injured by flying debris. Investigators later described the accident as one of the worst diving tragedies in history. Graphic details circulated in accident reports. The bodies had suffered massive trauma due to the instant release of dissolved gases. The investigation revealed that the clamp design lacked a safety interlock, a mechanism that would have prevented it from being opened while pressurized. The tragedy forced the diving industry to overhaul its equipment standards. Today, modern saturation diving systems are equipped with redundant safety mechanisms specifically to prevent a repeat of what happened aboard the Byford Dolphin. But the memory of those 4 divers remains, a grim reminder of how unforgiving the physics of pressure can be.